Most of us are like spiritual weekend warriors. We spend our weekend chasing the ecstatic high, the plant medicine ceremony, the intense breathwork session, or the retreat that promises a breakthrough. But then the work week comes around and it's back to the daily grind. And everything that we gained over the weekend, all those deep resonant experiences, fade into nothing because we never really embodied it. See, I've been studying spirituality for over 10 years, and for the longest time, I always thought it was about having these mystical experiences or life-changing breakthroughs. And so I experimented with plant medicines, spiritual retreats to try and have these mystical experiences. And at times, it was amazing, but I kept returning to the same place, which was the ego or the lower self. Every breakthrough I had, every visionary experience, I always returned to the same old patterns, habits, and vices. And this went on for years until I discovered Rudolf Steiner and spiritual science. Instead of having mystical experiences or life-changing breakthroughs, spiritual science emphasizes inner alignment. And Rudolf Steiner had spiritual experiences. He had many, many spiritual experiences where he was able to look into the past and see into the future, but these were a result of inner alignment that he achieved in his soul spiritual being. See, spiritual experiences and breakthroughs are actually the results of this soul spiritual alignment. But the reason that we chase the mystical ecstatic highs is because that's what we hear about or read about, and that's just outer manifestation of the inner state that these mystics have. And so what I want to say basically is don't put the cart before the horse. Because if you want the mystical experiences and breakthroughs, you got to start from aligning your soul spiritual being from within. And that's exactly what I'm going to share in this video. I'm going to go over what soul spiritual alignment is, why mystical experiences and breakthroughs happen when you have soul spiritual alignment, and how we can align our soul spiritual makeup with 6 simple practices from the book OCCULT SCIENCE by Rudolf Steiner. Let's get into it. The way I got into spirituality was roundabout. I started out as a college kid experimenting with plant medicines. Then I started doing them at music festivals, and that opened it up because at these festivals were the group meditations, the breathwork sessions, and even the cacao ceremonies. But after a while, it felt like chasing a high. And don't get me wrong, I think there's value to these things because they can bring someone around to the work. The work that you come around to is work on yourself. Because all these external experiences will eventually lead you to internally, like within, given that you don't get caught up in chasing that high forever. And for me, it led me to realize that something existed that was beyond the senses. Let's call it spiritual. And through a lot of stumbling around, I came to the work of Rudolf Steiner, who stressed that the point is not about ecstatic highs or intense mystical experiences, but it's a slow, gradual building up of your soul spiritual forces through alignment. So what is this soul spiritual alignment? Well, it's basically the harmony and coordination of the triad of forces which are within us, which are the thoughts, the feelings, and the will. But to align this triad is easier said than done. Just think about how many random thoughts can bubble up daily without our consciousness. These thoughts can affect our emotions, and then emotions make us do things, perform actions, and then we become passive victims of this inner chaos. And sometimes you can realize this duality playing out. Everything may be smooth on the outside, but your inner world, your inner state is like a whirlwind. But you have the possibility to change this. If you can align your soul forces, you can become what's called the master. And it's really the ego that becomes the master because we're in the epoch of the ego, which means the development and ultimately mastery of oneself through the ego or individuality. So the ego transmutes the lower self into the higher self. And once you do that, you bridge the gap between the physical and spiritual. Then all the breakthroughs and experiences happen of their own accord because it's not really about obtaining anything new. It's only letting the spiritual organs which you already possess to grow. It's like a blind man who can't see the world around him until he gets the operation that allows him to see. The physical world always existed in front of him, but he couldn't see it. Much in the same way, the spiritual is all around us, but until we bridge this gap, we're just like the blind man. And again, the way we bridge this gap is by making the ego the master so that it can put the thoughts, feelings, and will into harmony. And through this harmony, the lower self is transmuted into the higher self, and the physical to spiritual bridge is built. That's why I'm saying that breakthroughs and experiences will happen of their own accord once we have soul-spiritual alignment. And the best way to do this is through the exercises and meditations. These exercises are taken directly from the book Occult Science by Rudolf Steiner. The first exercise is to gain more control over your thoughts. We start with this because it's the easiest to control. So once a day, preferably at the same time each day, we engage in a thought exercise. And this exercise consists of concentrating for as long as you can on a particular object. And we want this object to be as simple as possible because naturally we're not super interested in simple plain objects like a spoon, for example. So what you do is you take a simple object like a spoon and you only think about that object. As soon as your mind wanders off, you bring it back to this idea of a spoon. And you can think about anything, but it has to be related to a spoon, and you keep coming back to this object. So you can think about, for example, the shape of a spoon, what the material is, what the function is, how it was created, and you keep coming back to this thought. So you're concentrating and you're training your force and your concentration. And we're making sure that we're really exerting our concentration by choosing a simple object. So we're not drawing this power from having an interest in it. And do this for as long as you can do this for. And if you find that you drift, then you can even start with 5 minutes a day and work your way up gradually. So this thought exercise is done for 1 whole month every day. The second exercise is to gain more control of your willpower. For this, we choose something to do physically at a specific time each day. And this action should also be super simple, and it has to be something that you would never normally do. So by compelling yourself to do something completely pointless, or at least something that you don't really care about, again, it's about making sure we're totally intentional in drawing soul power to accomplish these exercises. So for example, you can water a plant, right, for as long as you can at the same time each day. And you make yourself do the same action at the same time each day. And you do this for as long as possible. And you also do this for a month. But during this month, as you're doing the second exercise, you continue to do the concentration exercise, right? So you don't, you kind of stack these exercises so you don't lose any results that you gain from that concentration exercise. So this is for the second month. And we're training basically 2 forces of the triad individually. The third exercise is where it gets a little wider in scope. And so you have to integrate it more holistically in your life. The third exercise is not done at a specific time of day, but relates more to being aware of your emotions and not letting them reach any extremes. So no extreme happiness or no extreme sadness. They must be foreign to you. You try to not let your emotions go either way too extreme. This allows your emotional pendulum to stay stable and consistent. But you have to be careful here. It doesn't mean that you become indifferent to people and situations that happen around you. In fact, soul spiritual development should make you more compassionate and more empathetic to people's pains and joys. But you have to be in control. That's the main thing. And that means that you have to try to exert your soul force to not have extreme emotions in any one direction. So now we have an exercise that trains each one of the triad forces individually. And then this is where it gets interesting. Now we take the 3 forces and we combine them together and train them in combinations. So what does this look like? We basically take two of the forces and we combine them. If I combine thinking and feeling as a pair, we get our fourth exercise. And this exercise is positivity. So in life, things happen to us, right? The good and the bad, it all happens to us. But ultimately, we ourselves have the power to determine how we feel about it. And if we can think about a positive, even in the face of a negative, we can direct our emotions to feel better about that situation. So it's seeing the positive, and it's being a little craftier with our soul forces, because now we have to use our thinking force. And then that thinking is carried into our emotional force, our feelings. This is what working with triad pairs looks like. The fifth exercise, and we're almost done here. The next triad pair that we work with is thought and willpower paired together. The fifth exercise is called openness. Okay, being open. And it's called that because we have to maintain an openness to new experiences. As occultists, we shouldn't shut ourselves off to experiencing new things because of our past perspectives. Sure, we don't want to go overboard and pretend this is an excuse to do whatever our lower self desires. And that's like totally not the point, but the point is to have an open mind for experiencing new things without reason as they present themselves to us. We have to keep an open mind about everything, even if it contradicts what we think we know about the world. By doing this, we exert a thinking force because it's often something that you're opposed. So you're opening up first by thoughts, you're thinking about it, and then it's carried into the willpower by you physically going through the new experience or being open to it. And again, these exercises blend more with the motions of life rather than being done at a fixed time each day, like the first two exercises. And the sixth and last exercise is called harmony. Harmony is more of a way of life, but this kind of extends to the rest of your life as long as you practice these, is you bring in inner harmony between these three soul forces by practicing these exercises as you will, and you kind of come up with your own program to do different combinations of them each day. So you started with the thought, you went to the will power exercise, and then you started doing positivity. Now, for example, you want to do some positivity, which is thinking and feeling, and you might stack a willpower exercise on it. So you do these in different combinations and pairs, and you pair the paired exercises with each other. And in this way, it starts to build this harmony between thinking, feeling, and willing. You start to bring these forces into an alignment, into a directed control intentionally, right? And you start to see and be able to direct these different forces and control these different forces. And that's it for this one. Hope you found this useful, and thanks for watching. Until next time.